My girlfriend actually laughed at me and goes, "Pet owners will believe anything if you sound scientific enough." This was right after I'd mentioned that some of my controlled substance inventory was coming up short during our monthly audit. I just looked at her and said, "Science is about verification." Then I used my pharmacy tracking software to trace the missing drugs and installed hidden cameras throughout my clinic before calling the DEA about suspected pharmaceutical theft. She discovered real quick that some experiments have federal consequences when they arrested her for trafficking veterinary-grade controlled substances to desperate pet owners online. She's now serving 8 years in federal prison after her miracle cure operation poisoned 12 dogs and put 3 kids in the hospital. If stories like this blow your mind, definitely hit that subscribe button because trust me, this is just the beginning of how wild this gets. So here's what I need you to understand about how this all started. I'm a veterinarian in a small town outside Nashville, been running my own practice for about 6 years. It's a good life. I know every pet owner in town, treat everything from farm animals to fancy purebred dogs, make decent money, respected member of the community, all that. About 8 months ago, I started dating this woman I met at a veterinary conference. Let's call her Amanda. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, super smart, knew all about animal medications, seemed genuinely passionate about helping animals. Perfect match, right? Amanda was impressive as hell. She'd come by the clinic sometimes and could discuss drug interactions, dosage calculations, treatment protocols better than some vets I knew. Pet owners loved her because she could explain complex medical stuff in simple terms. "You're so lucky to have someone who understands your work," my receptionist would say. "Most partners just nod along when vets talk about cases." And honestly, it was nice having someone who got the technical side of what I do. When I'd come home stressed about a complicated surgery or difficult diagnosis, Amanda understood the medical challenges in ways that non-medical partners couldn't. The first red flag should have been obvious in hindsight. About 3 months into dating her, I started noticing weird things during my monthly controlled substance audits. We keep strict records of everything DEA requirements, you know. Every single pill of tramadol, every vial of ketamine, every dose of morphine has to be accounted for. My numbers kept coming up short. Not by huge amounts, but consistently. A few tramadol pills here, a small vial of injectable pain medication there. The kind of discrepancies that could be explained by record-keeping errors but were happening too regularly to ignore. "Maybe your staff is making documentation mistakes," Amanda suggested when I mentioned it. "Small clinics always have issues with controlled substance tracking." Right, documentation mistakes. That happened to only affect pain medications and sedatives. But the thing that really started bothering me was how Amanda always seemed to know when I was doing inventory. I'd be in the drug storage room counting pills, and she'd show up with coffee or wanting to help organize things. "I love how methodical you are," she'd say, watching me count bottles. "Most vets I work with are so disorganized with their pharmacy management." Then one day, I was treating this elderly golden retriever with severe arthritis. Owner was this sweet old lady who'd brought her dog to me for 10 years. The dog was in obvious pain, and I prescribed a course of tramadol to manage it. 2 days later, the owner calls me in tears. "Dr. Johnson, the medication isn't working at all. Buddy's still whimpering and can barely walk." That was weird. Tramadol usually provides significant relief for arthritic pain in dogs. I asked her to bring the medication in so I could check it. The pills looked right, but when I tested them, they were basically sugar tablets with just enough active ingredient to pass a casual inspection. Someone had diluted the medication and replaced most of the actual drug with inert filler. "Where did you get this prescription filled?" I asked. "From that nice young woman at your clinic, Amanda. She said she could save me money by using her pharmaceutical connections." My stomach dropped. Amanda had been taking my prescriptions and filling them herself, then pocketing most of the actual medication while giving clients diluted versions. What I discovered next made my blood run cold. I started quietly investigating Amanda's pharmaceutical connections by calling other vets in the region. Turns out she'd been offering the same money-saving service to multiple clinics, always targeting elderly pet owners or people who seemed financially stressed. "Oh yeah, Amanda's great," one vet told me. "She's helped several of my clients get medications at reduced cost. Very generous of her to use her industry connections like that." Generous, right. But here's where it gets really messed up. I started checking online pet medication forums and found this whole community of desperate pet owners sharing miracle cures for various conditions. People whose veterinary treatment wasn't working, looking for alternative options. And there's Amanda, using a different name, selling veterinary-grade medications at premium prices to people whose pets were suffering. The same drugs she was stealing from my clinic and others, marketed as exclusive treatments not available through regular veterinary channels. She was literally stealing pain medication from sick animals, giving their owners ineffective substitutes, then selling the real drugs online to other desperate pet owners at marked-up prices. When I confronted her about the diluted tramadol, she goes, "Pet owners will believe anything if you sound scientific enough. That woman's dog probably feels better just because she thinks the medication is working." I'm standing there thinking, this woman just told me that placebo effect is an acceptable treatment for animal pain. "The dog was still limping and whimpering," I said. "Old dogs always limp. She was probably overreacting." "Amanda, you gave her fake medication." "I gave her affordable medication. Do you know how much money people waste on pet drugs that barely work anyway?" That's when she hit me with that line about pet owners believing anything scientific sounding. I just looked at her and said, "Science is about verification." She seemed confused by my response, like she expected me to agree about exploiting worried pet owners. That weekend, while Amanda was visiting her sister, I did some serious investigation. First thing I did was install hidden cameras throughout my clinic, especially in the drug storage areas. Legal in my own business, and I needed evidence of what was happening. Second thing, I started tracking my controlled substance inventory daily instead of monthly. If Amanda was stealing drugs, I wanted real-time documentation. Third thing, I called the DEA hotline for reporting pharmaceutical theft. Didn't give names yet, just described the situation and asked what kind of evidence they'd need for an investigation. "Controlled substance theft is a federal crime," the agent told me. "If you can document missing inventory and identify the person responsible, we'll open a case immediately." Monday morning, I started my new daily tracking routine. Within 3 days, I caught Amanda on camera taking bottles from my controlled substance cabinet and replacing them with identical bottles containing diluted medication. But the cameras revealed something even worse. She wasn't just stealing from my clinic. She was using her pharmaceutical sales rep credentials to access drug storage at multiple veterinary practices throughout the region. I had footage of her systematically stealing tramadol, ketamine, morphine, gabapentin, basically every controlled substance used in veterinary pain management. Then she'd replace them with diluted versions so the theft wouldn't be immediately detected. That's when I called the DEA for real. I need to report pharmaceutical theft by someone with sales rep access to multiple veterinary clinics. 2 days later, I'm sitting in a conference room with DEA agents, FBI investigators, and state veterinary board representatives, showing them hours of video evidence and documentation of systematic drug theft. "How long has this been going on?" the lead DEA agent asked. "Based on my inventory discrepancies, at least 6 months, but she's been accessing other clinics too." "We're going to need you to continue normal operations while we build the case. Can you do that without alerting her?" Acting normal while knowing your girlfriend is a federal drug trafficker was honestly harder than any surgery I'd ever performed. Amanda kept coming by the clinic, helping with organization, stealing drugs while I watched her on hidden cameras and pretended everything was fine. Then the investigation revealed something that made my stomach turn. Turns out Amanda wasn't just diluting medications and reselling them. She was creating her own designer veterinary drug combinations and selling them online as miracle cures for everything from cancer to seizures. These weren't just ineffective medications. They were actively dangerous. She was mixing controlled substances in combinations that could seriously harm animals, marketing them to desperate pet owners whose pets weren't responding to legitimate treatment. The DEA traced her online operation and found she'd sold contaminated medications to over 200 pet owners across 12 states. 12 dogs had died from her drug combinations. 3 children had been hospitalized after accidentally ingesting her pet medications that contained dangerous levels of pharmaceutical compounds. She wasn't just stealing drugs. She was running a nationwide operation that was killing animals and endangering kids. The arrest happened on a Thursday morning. I was performing routine spay surgery when federal agents walked into my clinic with arrest warrants. Amanda was in my drug storage room when they found her, literally in the process of replacing stolen tramadol with diluted substitutes. Amanda Richardson, you're under arrest for trafficking controlled substances, conspiracy to distribute Schedule IV narcotics, and endangering public safety through contaminated pharmaceutical products. The look on her face when she realized federal agents had been watching her was absolutely priceless. This woman who'd been so confident about manipulating pet owners suddenly understood that her scientific drug dealing was actually just federal crimes. But the best part was watching her try to explain herself to the agents. "This is a misunderstanding," she kept saying. "I was helping pet owners access affordable medications." The DEA agent looked at her like she was insane. "You were selling contaminated drugs that killed 12 dogs and put 3 children in the hospital. Those were isolated incidents. The medications are generally safe. You mixed morphine with gabapentin in concentrations that would be dangerous for a human adult, then sold it as a dog anxiety treatment." Even facing federal drug trafficking charges, she still thought she could talk her way out with pharmaceutical-sounding explanations. The investigation took 8 months, but the evidence was overwhelming. Video footage of theft, financial records of online sales, testimony from veterinarians whose inventories she'd accessed, medical records from pets and kids who'd been harmed by her products. Amanda pleaded guilty to federal drug trafficking charges and got 8 years in prison. Could have been 20 if she'd gone to trial, but her lawyer convinced her that video evidence of stealing controlled substances doesn't leave much room for defense. The pharmaceutical company fired her immediately and banned her from working in any medical sales capacity. The state veterinary board sanctioned 3 clinics, including mine, for inadequate controlled substance security protocols. But the real damage was to her professional reputation. The case made national news because of the kids who got hospitalized. "Pharmaceutical sales rep harmed children with veterinary drug cocktails" was the headline that destroyed any chance of her working in healthcare again. Several pet owners filed civil lawsuits for the cost of treating animals she'd harmed. The family whose toddler ended up in intensive care after accessing her unsafe medication sued for $500,000. She lost everything: career, freedom, financial stability, professional reputation, all because she thought desperate pet owners were easy targets for pharmaceutical fraud. Me. The DEA and Veterinary Board commended my cooperation with the investigation. The security improvements I implemented became a model for other small animal practices. Got some new clients from veterinarians whose practices she'd compromised. But honestly, the hardest part wasn't the investigation or legal proceedings. It was realizing that someone I'd trusted with my business, my community, and my reputation had been systematically harming animals while exploiting the love pet owners have for their companions. She'd used my clinic's reputation to legitimize a drug trafficking operation that hurt the exact people I dedicated my career to helping. I learned that when someone dismisses ethical concerns as naive, they're usually justifying unethical behavior. I learned that access to controlled substances is a privilege that requires constant vigilance to protect. And I learned that criminals often target small communities because they assume people won't have the resources or knowledge to investigate suspicious activity. My new girlfriend is a teacher who brings her cat to my clinic and pays full price for medications like everyone else. When she talks about helping people, she means teaching kids to read, not exploiting vulnerable pet owners for profit. It's honest. It's ethical. It's absolutely wonderful, and the best part, she thinks Amanda's whole operation was a perfect example of how professional credentials can be weaponized to exploit trust. People trusted her because she sounded medical, she told me when I explained the case. But real medical professionals protect patients, they don't harm them for profit. That's exactly what happened. Amanda had used legitimate pharmaceutical knowledge to create an illegitimate drug operation that hurt both animals and humans. If this story taught you something about spotting manipulation or protecting yourself from people who exploit professional trust, drop a comment below about your own experiences. And definitely subscribe because I've got more stories about how people's own choices led to consequences they never saw coming. Sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who sound the most professional.